Welcome to the Menlo Midweek podcast, everybody. My name is Mark.
And my name is Jessica.
And we have Cheryl with us today.
Woo!
Cheryl, what is your title today? We have to keep the tradition alive.
I'm going to go with plate spinner.
Okay.
That's pretty much what I feel like right now.
Oh, gosh. How many plates do you think you
There's
have?
a lot of plates spinning right now. It's good, though. I've created my little Trello board so that I can keep track of the different lanes.
Oh,
so much.
I do, too. I used it in LA and hadn't used it up here. So I just popped it open because I needed to be able to see everything in one thing.
Yes.
And not
That's
flipping
helpful.
back and forth through.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Are you a visual person? And
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I don't know if I would have said that, but just recently, and when I was setting up the Trello thing, I was like, oh, wow, I'm a really visual person. I need to see.
Yeah, that's how I am too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I need to see it all in front of me. Yeah, all on one thing. I got this giant, I have two monitors in my office now, and one is like one of those long, wide ones just for the Trello board.
Yeah.
So the Trello board can fit.
Oh my gosh. Incredible.
On
what a dream.
there, and then I can work over here. And
maybe I need a second.
Yeah.
I'm
monitor.
geeking out about it so much. I love it so much. And people walk into my office, they're like, Command Central, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, yes. But it's all because of the need to see it all.
Yeah.
And
That's what I'm struggling with right now in my new role, trying to learn our project management system, which I think we're going to not use anymore. Because for me, it like has all of the tasks in there, but I'm like, I need to see it in one spot, and I need to see it in order of like, this is due tomorrow, this is due this week. It just doesn't have that right now, and it's very frustrating.
Well, I wonder if, you know, speaking of maybe somebody who's coming on board who might like Asana, which I've used that too.
Yeah,
which
I've only heard wonderful things about it, so that's probably what we'll do.
And I think the reason I went to Trello, we had Asana and it was costing us something or whatever. And Trello was free, so we went over there for what I needed. But again, that was a long time ago when Asana was being run by squirrels running on a little treadmill to make the energy happening or something in the World Wide Web.
Sure.
But yeah, I haven't ever looked at ours, the backside of our project management, but so important. One, whoever runs it does have to get comfortable with it, right? And it has to work for them. So for me, it's really hard if it's not all there in front of me.
Yeah.
So
if you're listening and you have a different project management tool you want to recommend, please text us at 650.
600.
Dang it. 650-600-0402.
Nice.
Or if you work for Asana and want to give us a discount.
Yeah. If you want to sponsor the podcast,
sponsor the
we're always
podcast.
open to that.
Just nerding out here right now.
Nerding out. That kind of stuff is so fun for me. I love to get in there. Yeah.
Definitely. And it also really looked like teaching was fun for you as well. Your good morning at the 10:30 service was like the most honest good morning from a speaker in a long time. Like you were genuinely excited to be up there and to greet all of our captive audience.
Can't wait to hear what Phil says about that. You don't think his good mornings are genuine?
He can challenge it if he wants to.
Let's the Good Morning Challenge, Phil. I really love preaching, and I don't know if I'd love it as much if I had to do it, 52 weeks a year. I don't know how people did that back in the day, but I do. I just love it. It's Phil and I have talked about this. It's really for all the things we do in our jobs. The preaching piece is like your extracurricular activity. It's your bonus. I don't know if we've talked about this, but it was funny when I stopped preaching for a while there because, Phil came in, the big guy. And I was getting emails like, are you still on staff? What do you do? And I would love to tell you that when you preach, that's all you do, but we do a lot of other things. But so for me, I don't have a problem adding hours to my week. I don't feel bitter about it. I don't feel when I'm preaching because it's really fun for me.
Got it.
And also my spiritual pathway is study. And
Oh, yes.
different people have different spiritual pathways. That is my pathway. And so I worship when I'm preparing for a message. People will say, well, you need to keep your devotional life separate from your sermon prep life and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to think that, but now I really see it as this, when I'm preparing for a sermon, I always do try to spend time in the passage or whatever we're doing just in my devotional space, which is typically in the mornings. But I don't really have a hard line between, I'm studying for this sermon, I'm reading a commentary, so that is study and this is devotional. Because I have literally been reading a commentary before and just gotten down on my knees and been like, oh God, you are bigger than I ever thought. Oh, you're beautiful. And I know that's not for everybody, but for me, that really is my spiritual pathway. So it's so fun. And I love our 8:30 service at the Menlo Park campus and the 10:30 service. And it's just been fun. I think what's also gotten fun that just takes time is feeling known and knowing people. So I love it when, shout out to my neighbor, I don't know if she listens to these, but she sits in the same place and she's one of those happy, like nodding kind of faces.
Yeah.
Yes.
That when I'm preaching, I'll look over at her and also I know her, right? And I'm getting to know families and different people and where they sit. So it was fun this week too. Thank you, 10:30. They all, good morning, Cheryl. It was just fun to feel that in a room. And that's what's fun for me, because I've had opportunity in my life to speak at other things and retreats and that kind of stuff. But there's nothing like preaching in your own church family, because it does just feel like a relationship in a way that not at a conference or
it's like home court advantage.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. So
little challenge for our listeners. Hey, if you want to encourage the speaker this weekend and you're there, just give them a nod and like a yeah. And that'll go a long way. Help your preacher preach.
Go crazy and go, amen.
Oh, whoa,
I was getting that in the 8:30.
Donovan got some too. I was like, woo,
I know.
great.
I didn't know who that was, but I thank you for them.
It's encouraging.
Yeah, it's really encouraging.
So Cheryl, you're one of the minds behind Seasons as well. So we kicked off the Seasons Permission to Feel series, and that's what we're going to be in now for the next couple of weeks. So before you dive into your message, let's talk about what Seasons is, why we're studying it, and why it's important.
I can't take credit for the idea. I think it came from somebody else, Stefan or somebody, but so I don't take credit for that. But I really like what came out of the idea, which was we all live in different seasons, and what's in a church community and church family, that's one of the things you have to be aware of too. You're in a group of people where some people they're just on a high. Life is good, things are fun, and then right next to them, you've got somebody who's in just a dark hole, or just found out some news that's really, really difficult, and so you have all this going on. And I think for anyone would say, I don't know anybody who's like, I've been on a major high for 3 years, No, typically every week, every month, every year has different seasons in it. And with those seasons are emotions. And there can be in the Christian community, not always, but there can be a sense sometimes that I can't feel, especially if it's hard stuff. Or I'll be honest, I think sometimes there are some groups, there's some groups that if they're really doing great, they don't want to admit that to anybody because, other people are having hard times or whatever. But maybe just disengaging with our emotions and stuffing them at times, kind of plowing through those seasons that are harder, or maybe it's a wonderful season and you feel like you don't know where to celebrate. There can be those seasons when you're pregnant and 3 of your really good friends are struggling with infertility. And how do you have that? You just got a job and 2 of your buddies or girlfriends are without a job. And so how do we live with all the emotions that go with us without stuffing them, living them authentically? And sometimes the safest place for those emotions, hopefully there's always a group of close friends, but always God is a safe place to go and to be able to really live those out. So that's kind of where, Jess, you were a part of this, so you might speak more to even where as we were crafting different sermon series. And...
I will take a little credit.
Okay.
Because this was one of my ideas. We met in teams, and my team came up with an emotion type series, and Matt Stefan's team came up with the seasons part. So they kind of combined them. But I love this series. If you've been listening at all to this podcast, we talk a lot about therapy and mental health and stuff like that. So this is really exciting for me. Really looking forward to digging in. I think you set up this series really, really well. One question I have for you is, what does each season mean? So you hear spring, summer, fall, winter. Right. I think we have a general idea of what they probably are. Yep. But could you just go through and just a sentence or two of if you're in spring, this is what that means? And
Yeah, great question. The way we're looking at it is that spring, which I was supposed to actually preach more about spring this week. I did not. Sorry, Phil. But Phil will take it to where it's supposed to go. But I did feel like we needed a setup and definitely. Just didn't have time for all that. But spring would be beginnings, new life. Might be originally when I was planning this sermon, I was going to do some spring psalms and talk about even just new life in Christ when you become a Christian, that new space in our journey. But spring would be that. Summer would be joy and celebration and fun, and every Californian knows summer, right? And then fall might be when there begins to be loss. And, the image, the metaphor, if you will, of the leaves falling from a tree and trees looking now more barren and seeds going fallow and that kind of thing, which would also then lead into winter, where things might just feel dead. You might just feel dead inside. You might feel like, will there ever be a sunshine again? That kind of thing. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Does it feel like it's cyclical in the sense of, I feel like I'm in fall right now. Feels like things are changing. I feel like it's going to be harder. That means winter is coming, for lack of a better term. Do you feel like that's true? I mean, obviously every situation is different, but in my experience, it's kind of felt that way of feels like things are not going to be going well for a little bit. I'm in fall. Then I get into winter because things are hard. And then it's like, okay, now I'm getting out of that. And automatically I'm going into spring. Or can it go back and forth, do you think? Or maybe that's more of an existential question.
Yeah, I think probably personalities would really shape that. Yeah. And then age. Oh, yeah. I think when you're old, you go I can go back and forth in a week.
That's true.
But I think maybe the metaphor too, for seasons of growth, I do think that might feel a little more linear in my life of, even thinking, I mentioned this in my sermon, but my spiritual journey, right, really was a springtime. It was a joy. It was new beginnings. It was fun. Into summer with celebration and rode that pretty long, and then hit the fall, right? But in the spiritual growth, all those seasons are so necessary, and not just spiritual growth, personal growth. The fall, hard times, those are the places where really our character, our faith are forged and deepened. I think winter, I don't know anyone older person, and by older, I even would just probably say 40 plus. The people I know who seem to are just what I would call deep streams. They're my friends that I would go to when I'm struggling or want wisdom or want to be able to be authentic. I don't know a single one of those people who hasn't had a really significant winter, whether it be a death of a child or a spouse, a loss of a dream, a thing hoped for that hasn't come about. And those, winter people are my kind of people. So, yeah.
And this is all anchored in the Psalms. So how do the seasons, what we experience emotionally? I also thought it was kind of interesting before we get to the Psalms.
Yeah.
You started your message with agreeing on different kinds of seasons. So yes, there was the emotional side, like what we're talking about, what we're feeling, but there's also that's tied to, you said, time or your spiritual journey or a diagnosis. How can all of that also play into seasons?
Yeah, I think I was really working off of the metaphor, thinking when do people use that term, right? We're really in a season of loss. Oh my gosh, yeah. That was the season of, that was college. That was a season of my life that was, so I think I was trying to name that, that the emotions come with what might be more of a physical season, whether it's a season of loss, a season of celebration. How many people right now, shout outs to everyone, grandparents, parents, kids, student, who are celebrating graduation. This is a graduation season. You'll hear people say that, like, "Hey, don't call me. Our life group's going on hiatus right now because it's graduation season." Right? You got parties, you have celebrations, you're traveling, maybe whether it's college or high school or whatever. So that's kind of how I was thinking of it. And in my family, we were in a little bit of a season of the diagnosis. My mom was diagnosed with colon cancer, and I can't even remember. It's been a blur. She's fine. She had surgery about a month ago, 4 weeks ago. Got it all looking good. She's amazing. She's a rock star. She's having a hard time slowing down and letting herself recover. But this is to you, Mom. Don't go to Pilates. Stop it. She's going to be 86 in a couple of days. So,
wow.
She's awesome. But anyway, but that's a season for us, season of the diagnosis, right?
So external things that are informing your emotional state would all be tied into that. And then having the permission to then say, okay, I'm in the season. This isn't something I might, I might not need to hide, or it's something that I can live in and be in there. And so what can help, how does that tie into the Psalms, and where can we drive those feelings of either happiness and joy or grief or disappointment, and where are those found in the Psalms? Yeah.
And I think, I don't know who, when we were thinking of the series, thinking of different places, where would we ground this? What would that be? And I do think this might have been Matt Stefan, shout out to him, that said, what about the Psalms? Because that makes the most sense. Certainly there are emotions and experiences and seasons throughout the narratives in the scripture, even in some of the didactic teaching, but the Psalms are the place. They are poems. I know some people hate poetry. I love poetry. But I had, it's funny, I didn't love poetry in school, because in school you're analyzing poems. And I would say, as much as we study the Psalms and that kind of thing, the Psalms are meant to be experienced, like a poem is meant to be experienced. And I think, if you've heard somebody read poetry or gone to a poetry reading, I had the joy many, many years ago to hear Billy Collins is a poet I love. He's not a Christian or that kind of thing, but he was a poet laureate in the United States. I heard him speak and read his poetry. and it just comes to life and alive, and you're there to experience it. And I think that's how the Psalms are really meant. They're meant to be prayed out loud. I think they're meant to then experience a feeling, not just this is what I now know about God. I know God is good and compassionate, but I'm somehow experiencing God's goodness. I'm using, in the of course, the Psalms are filled with metaphors. And is God really a rock? No, he's not a rock. But do I experience him as a rock, as solid, as something to stand upon, something to trust in, someone to go to who is safe, that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think one thing I love about this series is the cards that were created. You can also find them online if you didn't get one this last week. They'll be at your campus every Sunday. But just the specificity of it and the ease of it in a way of okay, I think the first step is figure out what season you're in. And then you can turn it back over and say, oh, wow, I'm in a season of fall. And hey, look, there's some Psalms I can pray that are attached to where I'm in right now. And then you just wrote up step by step of how do you actually do this? And I think especially in difficult seasons, it's so hard to maybe, if you're like me, it's I pray angry prayers pretty often to God, but sometimes I don't know how. I don't know what that looks like. And so I love the just detail of that. And you want to talk a little bit about that card?
Yeah, shout out to Josh Fox on this. He really made this what we needed it to be.
Yeah, we had talked about the emotion wheel, and then he was on an airplane and drew a picture of how to connect the seasons to the emotions and the Psalms, and he did a great job.
Wow. Did a great job. Yeah, naming those things. And so on the front, like you mentioned, you've got the season, you've got some words that kind of, beginnings. Thanksgiving would be spring. Those are some of those, trust and hope. And then there's 5 Psalms. And we also, if you go to the QR code on this or on our website at menlo.church/seasons, each week we have a guide that will walk you through these Psalms and how to pray through them with some other resources, books to read, links to videos, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think the church has always used the Psalms as a way to learn how to pray. And sometimes, especially amongst evangelicals, although who identifies as an evangelical anymore, such a scary word. But for those in that world over the years, historically, there's sometimes been resistance to written prayers or prayers by others, because I should be so connected to God that my prayer would just come out naturally from me. Whereas, again, going back into more of a high church tradition or the Catholic Church initially, and then break-offs of that are more liturgical, those I've learned a ton from those traditions because they embrace praying scripture. They embrace praying prayers written by others. And again, those help us, to your point, Jess, when you don't know how to pray or you're kind of feel clunky. And because the evangelical church has made, praying you've got to be able to pray just spontaneously and it just needs to come out of your heart, I think that's shut a lot of people down who are maybe have a harder time articulating things or speaking in front of people or whatever. And so it's I can't pray. I'm not a good prayer. And if we could normalize, what if you're in a life group or you're with your people and you're having a corporate time of prayer, maybe you just open the Psalms and you read a few verses from it. That's your prayer. That's what you offer to the group. And then I would say many, many traditions and many, many people really try to read through or pray through the Psalms every month. And I've been in rhythms of that in my life. I'm not right now, but I'm wanting to do it through this series. So I want to get back to that. But if you read 5 Psalms a day. You can get through the Psalms every month. And there's lots of reading plans out there on the interwebs to do that. I have a little book that a friend of mine gave me that walks me through it, which is super helpful. And I was in a group years ago where we were doing this as a group, and the way we did it was you read Psalm 1, prayed through Psalm 1, Psalm whatever the day of the week was. So it's the first of the month, you do Psalm 1, then you do Psalm 6, then you do Psalm 11. I don't do math really well, but basically, so you end up doing 5. No, not 31.
It's okay.
Don't listen to me at all on that. That's not how you do it. You do 1, 31, 60. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, but it gets you through it. We did it. And people I really respect in ministry, some of those people really have that habit where they've been doing that for years. And again, I think the Psalms, Mark, as we were talking about, is just it helps me not just know about God, but actually step into a place where I can experience Him. Again, different from reading a nonfiction book or reading poetry.
Yes. I got a question on the Psalms, but first I want to unpack a few words that you use that people might not be familiar with. Didactic teaching.
Okay. Yep.
And liturgical.
Ah, good. Yeah. Didactic would be like more like your what's the definition for that? Like Romans, a book of the Bible in that world that's more like a nonfiction book. Like it's like here, it's not narrative like the Gospels would be. It's A, B, C. It's your outlines. It's your, that kind of thing. Liturgy is where that comes from. And so many church traditions, when you go into their church service, they are using a liturgy, a plan, and I don't even know the definition of liturgy. They use a plan that guides them through their prayers, their hymns, their scripture readings. And so it's a little more formalized. It's a little more structured. The reality is we have a liturgy at Menlo.Church, right? Our liturgy is 3 songs, especially at most of our services. Take away the 8:30 service, they have a different liturgy, but they all have a liturgy. Ours is typically 3 songs, an announcement, a sermon, a song, a benediction. So that's a liturgy. Yep. It's your structure of how you gather and how you meet.
Yes.
So
a really popular one is Book of Common Prayer. That's a lot of traditions will use that as their morning devotional time. I picked that up from Matt Summers, campus pastor at Mountain View, a while ago. I love it. I think there's something about that structure and returning into that.
Yes.
But again, it's praying prayers through other people's prayers, other reflections, playing through scriptures. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The Psalms are a lot of them. Are they organized? Is there portions of the Psalms that we can help break off this large portion of the Bible into? How do we approach reading through the Psalms?
Yeah, well, and I talked a little bit about that in the sermon. We have to know that these Psalms are poems that are prayers that were being used throughout the Israelite nation. They're using these, and then they were pulled together and compiled. So that's how were they used out there? I don't know, but they were compiled, and so the intentionality around the compilation of them is what's kind of interesting. And I mentioned this in the sermon that they are broken into. The Psalms is 150 Psalms. Broken into 5 books, which is meant to mirror the 5 books of the Torah. So when somebody mentions the Torah, sometimes I get in my mind just this person opening up a scroll and reading a bunch of 10 Commandments or something, right?
Yeah.
But really, the Torah is the first 5 books of our Old Testament. It's the laws and the ways of God. And so again, I think those who compiled this, we don't know this for sure because they didn't write out, we compiled it this way but it seems to be that they were wanting to mirror the Torah. And in a sense, providing the prayers that and the emotions and what goes along with those books would now be expressed in prayer. And then once, at least my understanding is, once they were this was compiled, then they began to be put to music and were sung in the temple and that kind of thing. So,
and if you read the Bible in chronological order, the Psalms are dispersed throughout the entire Old Testament, right?
Yes, because of where, because they're written by, they're written by David, they're written by Moses, they're written by a couple other people I've never heard of. And so I think when somebody's doing that chronological Bible thing, they're trying to figure out, okay, this would fall here, or this is a Psalm of Moses that was an expression of going through the Red Sea and all that. So we might stick that in there somewhere with Exodus.
I did the Bible recap. That there's a daily listening, and then there's a podcast that recaps what you just listened. And I remember that there were Psalms kind of dispersed throughout, and I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of makes a lot more sense that way, in a way, because it's like you read about David and what he was going through in whatever book of the Bible, and then here's a psalm he wrote about that. And it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I've done the read through the Bible in a year chronological Bible, and it does that too. I mean, I haven't done that in a while, but and it is. It's kind of helpful. Stick it in its space.
Nice. And then we arrived at having 3 P's. We had permission, presence, prayer after the Psalms, which I guess could be the 4th.
Psalms.
Right.
The Psalms.
Yeah. How'd you land on those 3?
Yeah, just, when you're pulling things together, you kind of want to what do I hang this on so that the listener is easier for them to hear and take notes and to kind of retain it. So thank you for retaining that, Mark.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of where I landed on wanting to then give that broad overview of the Psalms as a book. The other thing I was going to add to this is I think what's hard when you're trying to neatly teach the Psalms or teach through the Psalms is that, it's not like here's the section of Psalms on lament. Here's the section of Psalms. I mean, even our Psalms that we list for spring and winter, fall and summer, contained in each of those Psalms might be 3 different seasons.
Right.
But we tried to select these on an emphasis, right? Like, very rarely do you read a lament psalm that doesn't also have move towards praise or end up in worship or that. So that's what's hard with any book of the Bible probably, but the Psalms for sure. We want to put it in a neat little package and say, book 1 of the Psalms is lament, book 2 of the Psalms is gratitude, right. And it doesn't really work that way. But so I was trying to then, okay, after I kind of give the broad strokes of this book of Psalms, what do I want people to leave with? What do I want us to hang on to as Phil now steps in and starts to take us through those seasons much more systematically, I imagine. So, the permission to feel that's what the Psalms give us. You cannot read and pray the Psalms without seeing God is okay with you praying anger and fear and jealousy and pride or whatever. So permission to feel all the feels. Presence, again, I've already talked about this, but be careful that you don't start so analyzing Psalms that you miss the poetry of the Psalm. What's the metaphor it's giving you? Is it a rock? Is it a river? Is it like a stream? Is it like this? How do I sit with that to start to experience God's presence there in it? And then prayer, that this is our prayer book. This is a book that teaches us to pray. And I think it's why Jesus quoted the Psalms more than any other book that he quoted. One, there are many, I didn't go down this wormhole, but there are many what are called messianic Psalms that are considered by many, as prophetic to Jesus and the coming of the Messiah. We looked at those a little bit, actually, in the Easter series, in our Lent series, where Jesus, when he cries out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's a psalm. He's quoting a psalm. And yeah, so I think all of any Jewish person in the time of Jesus would have learned to pray by the Psalms. They would have prayed through the Psalms often. Their time in the synagogue, they would have prayed Psalms. They would have read those, that kind of thing. And so when Jesus quotes, he quotes Psalms. You see Paul quoting Psalms. You see, and they're just in them. They're just in them.
So you, this message, like you said earlier, it was kind of just setting up the whole series. You said it was supposed to kind of be on spring, but you kind of didn't do that. Well, I was going to ask, is there anything you do want to say here about springtime and what that season could be like for people, or any of that?
Yeah, I do. Where I was headed, you guys know I'm neurotic. I had really started. I have yellow legal pads with about 3 different sermons that were more grounded in Psalms. One was I was going to just preach on Psalm 103, which is a psalm of great praise and thanksgiving for who God is. And it was one of the first psalms very early in my Christian life. A mentor taught me to pray through that psalm when she was trying to teach me how to pray through Scripture, and Psalm 103 was one of those. And just this idea of thanksgiving, this idea of thanking God for who He is and what He's done, trusting this is a God I can trust, comes out in Psalm 103. I also started a couple different sermons using Psalm 84. So the ideas, again, of beginnings, newness, thanksgiving, trust. I think in the springtime, when we see new life starting to bud, it encourages, it deepens our trust.
Yeah.
That maybe it was winter and I didn't see anything, but you were working. That's what happens in the springtime, is we see, in a spiritual sense, we see that God was working, and it didn't seem like He was. It was winter. It was dark. It was nothing. Everything seems kind of dead. The trees are bare. And then springtime, there was a work going on underneath that I didn't see, and now I'm seeing it. And it just informs my trust in God, my faith in God.
And you also kind of like see the hope of summer.
Absolutely.
In all of that too. That's great.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, when we're talking about seasons, and obviously when we think about spring or summer, that could be seen as favorable. When we think about fall or winter, that is not favorable. Is the heart of the series to try to move towards spring and summer, or is it more so to be with God in your season where you're at?
That's great. I love that question. And I think what you just said, I don't think the purpose of the season is to get to summer. Although some of us all feel that when we're, especially up here.
Enneagram 7.
Oh my gosh. And all the rain and cold we've had.
Yeah.
But to your point, Mark, the goal isn't to get to, it's to be in. And because we're going to have those seasons.
Right.
I think that's also one of what can hinder spiritual formation and Christian discipleship, is that we want to think of it linearly. Linearly? Yeah.
That also sounds wrong.
I don't know.
In a line.
Well, we want to think of, I became a Christian, and then I was on this steady incline of spiritual growth, up and to the right, and now I got it all figured out, which really Christian growth is much more of a, up. It's like it's if you've ever run a marathon and they send you the map for I have not, but I've run a half. And so I got, they send you a map of your course and it shows the elevations, right? And so you'll get an elevation map, which shows basically that's not up and to the right? It's up and down and up and down and up and down. And then you say, I'm not going to run that marathon. I'm going to run the one in Huntington Beach because it's basically flat, and then they give you another map that's more the what do you call this? The
route.
The route. Yeah. The route. And so then you're kind of seeing, this is kind of goes in a circle, or again, like the Huntington Beach half marathon is almost really, it's an out and back, right? It's horrible. It's a straight out, straight back. But then I've also run other halves or 10Ks or whatever, where it's like a figure eight. Oh my gosh, the worst ever. I'm going down a wormhole, but the Hollywood 10K, to my friends who did that with me, shout outs, Jill, Pam. It was a up, back, up, back, up, back, up, back.
You're doing burpees, or not burpees.
Yeah, but
suicides.
It was horrible. And sometimes our spiritual life feels like that, right? Like I feel like I ran down that lane, I got it, and now I'm back in the same place.
Yeah. And
now I'm going forward, and now I'm back. And now I'm forward, and now I'm back. And sometimes our spiritual life feels like I'm doing a figure eight. Like I'm back where I started. What was that about? So yeah, I think it's more, how do we really, the life of discipleship and the life of the with God life, and to this particular sermon series is, how do I live life with God? And I talked about that a little bit. Like, am I moving toward Him or away from Him in every season? And that to me is the aim of discipleship and spiritual formation. It's not an arrival point. It's a movement toward. And in different seasons and in different moments of our life, my movement towards God might look different. But what I want is a with God life, right? I want a life that begins to look more and more like Jesus because I've been with Him. And I want to get quicker to run to forgiveness or to ask forgiveness. I don't think I'll ever arrive this side of the new heaven and the earth to never have to ask forgiveness again. I just want to get there quicker.
Yep.
I don't think I'm ever going to arrive at a space when I'm like, I got that all figured out. I'm the perfect leader. I'm the perfect friend. I'm the perfect daughter. I'm the perfect sibling, sister to my brother and sister. I'm the perfect whatever it is. I just want to get quicker to naming it if I blew it. I want to get quicker to thanking people when I need to thank them. I want to get quicker to that's where that's to me I want to move with God towards love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. Do I think I'm going to arrive at always being perfectly patient? No, I don't. And then here's the next thing. Can I get quicker at extending that grace to everybody around me?
Wow.
Right. Because it's so amazing how gracious I am to myself at times, and then how completely ungracious I am to others, or how gracious I am to others and completely ungracious to myself. And so if we could start to live that's discipleship to me. That's spiritual growth to me, not arrival at a destination and perfection. But yeah, I move a little bit quicker. I still have some of the same gaps I had in my 20s. But I think I think in my 20s, I didn't even know I had the gap. In my 30s, I started to name the gap. In my 40s, I started to ask forgiveness for the gap. I don't, but I'm, yeah. And I'm living in that with God.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was such a good question, Mark. I think, and Cheryl, your answer was great. I think that's something that's, I think a lot of our minds. I know for me personally, I feel like summer and winter are like the stagnant seasons in a way. And they're the seasons that I feel like I don't go to God enough because I'm either in a really good spot, I don't think about gratitude.
Yes.
Or I'm in a really hard spot and I don't know how to go to God. But spring and fall are almost like pathways, or spring you're going up towards summer and fall you're going down towards winter. And those are the seasons that I'm in spring and I'm like, oh God, thank you for getting me out of winter. I see all the work that you did. Or I'm in fall and I'm like, crap, this is going to be bad. Like I just came out of a great season and now it's going here. God, help me in this next season. And so I think that that's such a good response, Cheryl, because for me personally, now I see like summer and winter are the times that I need to go to God even more.
Yeah.
And trying to make it all like as even as possible, almost, if you will, that in every season, God is with you. And how do you draw near to God in each of those different seasons?
Yeah, that's good. And different people are going to have different, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I can relate to those.
Definitely. So, Cheryl, before we go, what encouragements can you give to those this week that are maybe thinking about these seasons in this way for the first time, or just saying, yes, I'm naming this as the season that I'm in? How would you encourage them to live through that, pray through that, just be in that spirit this week?
A few things come to mind. One, if you don't have some people to share the season you're in, find a life group. And let me say this, you're not going to find a perfect life group. And maybe you find a group and you need to try like 3 groups before you land in the group that feels like a fit. But find that group that is a space where you can name, hey, here's my season. This is where I am. And maybe it's 1 or 2 really close friends too. Maybe you don't yet feel safe with your life group. That can take some time. I get that. But find some people, because I think sometimes, again, we need those. Who can I say the hard thing to? I'm in a hard place. Who's not going to try to fix me? Who's not going to try to rescue me from it? Who's not going to try to tell me why I shouldn't be in that place or how to get out of the place? But that friend who really does just say, "Gal, I want to carry that with you. I want to pray that with you." So, and then if you're in a season of celebration, but you kind of don't feel like you can share it with anyone, that's a real thing, because everyone around you right now is in hard places.
Yeah.
Who's the person that you can just call and go, hey, can I tell you, like I had some really fun things happen this week and got some great encouragements. I'm not going to share that with everybody, but I got some safe friends. I sent them a text message and said, hey, guess what? This would sound really braggadocious and everything to somebody else, but to you guys, would you celebrate with me in this?
Yeah.
And they're my peeps, and they're like sending back fun text responses and all that. So have those people. I would say if you haven't been in a habit of praying the Psalms or ever done that, just 1 a day. We've got our little card that maybe you picked up, or you can pick it up. You can get it off of our website. Just take 1 psalm a day, and I would encourage you to pray it out loud if you can. And what I typically try to do is I try to read it all the way through, and then I go back through and I'll pause. Like the Psalm 103 psalm. He forgives us our sins or whatever. I might pause in that moment. This is how I would pray through it, and I just maybe confess some sins in that moment. Thank God for forgiving them. Ask him to reveal things to me that I might not be seeing in myself. So yeah, just start, 1 psalm a day.
It's a great encouragement. Just
pray
start. I need that.
Yeah. I think too, I love what you said about when you're maybe have something you want to celebrate and you don't always have You don't just say it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They think there's the flip side too, where you're like in a hard season and I'm like, well, my best friend is going through a really celebratory season, so I don't know how to say these things to her. I think it's usually the other way is a little bit harder.
Yep.
But my encouragement to people too would be that friend. Because I think, personally for me, when I find out another friend got married or is getting pregnant, it can be challenging for me sometimes to celebrate them, but I'm able to separate that enough that I'm like, hey, I'm struggling going through this, but I'm also so excited for you. And it's okay to feel both. And so I think I do know of friends of friends that they're like, oh, I can never tell them anything because they don't know how to celebrate me, or everything comes back to them. And so another encouragement is, as you're going through this, how can you be that person for other people, that you're a safe person, that that they're not going to, be scared to tell you things, that they know that you're safe and you can just be completely yourself with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. We have to, any relationship we're in will cost us if you're really in a relationship, if you have intimacy with anybody, right? And so what I mean by that is I might be the person, and I have been, Jess, obviously, I can relate to lots of weddings. I've been in like 18 weddings in my life, and not one of them was my own. I've been to a lot of baby showers, all the things. But here's the thing. I would be so sad if my friends did not invite me to those things or did not want me to be in those places. And so to your point, how do I show up and celebrate? And then go drive my car and cry. I don't know, whatever it is, or go punch a bag or go for a run or whatever it is that you need to do for yourself. But there are seasons that it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you not making it about you in that moment. It's not about you in that moment. It's about your friend's wedding. It's about your friend's baby. It's about your friend's new job. It's about your friend's whatever. Or if you're the friend in a good season and your friend's in a hard space, how do you sit with them and be with them? And in that moment, it's not about you, right? Because I am enough of positivity in my Strengths Finder 7 on my Enneagram. I might want to take that person out of their hard space. And that's really making it about me and what feels more comfortable to me. And I'm not comfortable with your whatever. So
we also have really great resources, menlo.church/care. If you need more than just listening to this, more than just talking to a friend, we've got therapy recommendations, spiritual direction. We have campus pastors to talk to you. Mark would love to talk to you. I know Cheryl would too. I would too, obviously. So yeah, definitely if you feel like, wow, this all sounds really great, I don't have any of that, or I need more, we have your back. Please text us 650-600-0402.
Nice.
And we will get you connected with whatever it is that you need.
Yes.
That's great. Yep.
Well, so Cheryl, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
It was great. And for those listening and watching, thanks so much for tuning in. And my encouragement to you all this week would just spend some time with yourself, try to identify your season, talk about it with a friend, and pray through a psalm.
Yeah. You said watching.
Yeah, this is
if
going to be
they're
on
listening
YouTube.
to a podcast, what do you mean?
You can check this out on YouTube now as well. It's on our Menlo Church YouTube channel. So this will hopefully be live not live, but it will be available for viewing on Wednesday mornings, similarly to the podcast. And if you want to help get involved in producing this, we'd love to extend that opportunity to you because we want people to use their gifts for Jesus. So thanks so much. Have a great week, Cheryl.
Yeah,
and have a great week, everyone else.
It's really good to be with you.
Bye.
Bye.